The Gulf Coast Growth Show is sponsored by Chevron Pasadena Refinery and is an extension of the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region, where our mission is to market and grow a vibrant regional economy. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. I'm your host, Jason Lee, and I'm joined by my co-host, Zeke Smith. And we are excited to have Miss Kate Lightfoot from the Baytown Olefins plant from ExxonMobil right down the street joining us today. We were talking before the show, probably they just absolutely love the speech that you gave at the Economic Alliance Women in Industry luncheon. Was it a couple of months ago?
Yeah, back at the end of March.
Mm-hmm. And so for you to then now join us today and continue to share your story is exciting news. So our topics today are going to talk a little bit about women in industry. So we're going to share some of that. We're going to talk about your experience through ECMA and really just kind of how you grew in the industry and what you're doing and the impact that you guys are making. A little bit about the value add that oil and gas is really going out and doing when it comes to decarbonization and really that kind of, I think the misnomer that might be out there that oil and gas doesn't play the significant role that they do in actually making cleaner refined energy out there for us. And so we're going to share that story and maybe even talk, granted this episode will be out after Mother's Day, but I think it's important to cite and share your experience of balancing all this stuff while being a full-time wife and mom. And so we're going to hear that story. We just had my mom on the episode before this, and so it's exciting to have moms joining us today.
Lots of love for the moms.
Just worked out that way, right?
That's right.
So before we kick off, why don't you share a little bit about your background? Tell us what you did, how you got to where you're at, and a little bit about your kind of the day in the life of the plant manager.
Okay. Yeah, so my background, I'm from Arkansas, little small town in South Arkansas. You know, growing up, I was always drawn more towards math and science. I didn't like to read. I still don't like to read. And so when I went to college, I thought about, majoring in pre-med. And through a friend of mine I had met, I ended up learning that there was this field called chemical engineering. And I tried it. I literally just took a class and then just went down that path. And so when I graduated, I did look at both med school and the chemical engineering field and ultimately ended up joining the chemical engineering field, actually working for Albemarle Corporation here in Pasadena.
Okay.
Worked with Albemarle Corporation a few years, and then I hired on with ExxonMobil in Baytown, and I've been there over 20 years now.
Wow.
So I started off as individual contributor, kind of basic chemical engineer, and then I was recognizing as having leadership capability. So I was given my first type of supervisory roles, supervising technical professionals, and then ultimately started supervising operators and getting more into the true operations management, risk management of the plant. And the rest of my career really, and that was, kind of 2010-ish. Since then, I've been in risk management roles, leading teams of larger and larger size to run plants and to run them safely in a way that's healthy for our communities.
Fantastic. And you mentioned two critical things, really safety, healthy, and communities.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that we talk about all the time. And I think people, again, when the news happens, the news is always the bad news.
Right.
But you've been on the risk side. Tell me about what you've seen, witnessed, experienced in regards to just overall general plant safety in 20 years, right? How has it evolved?
Yeah. What I would say is our standards have become higher. We've got higher standards about what's okay over the course of time. That applies to like individuals' safety and what we expect from individuals that we allow to work within our plants, all the way to making sure we don't have loss of containment and have fires and releases. And so both through the development of technology, our standards, how we work together and share practices across the industry, we are safer. And along with the regulations that we have within Texas and our country, which I'm absolutely supportive of, we also have lower emissions. And I expect that trend will continue over time. And, when we start talking about decarbonization, that's really that next big step is how do we apply technology to have the modern conveniences we have today, our cell phones, our cars, the chairs we sit in, the table that we're touching, our clothes, all of that. How do we have those modern conveniences in a way that has less emissions and less carbon footprint in the environment?
Love it. And then you mentioned working together, and I think you've spent some time with ECMA, TCC, the Texas Chemical Council here in our area.
Yeah.
And you wanted to share a little bit about your experience. I mean, how has it been coming together with them and growing?
Yeah, throughout my career, whether I was with Albemarle or ExxonMobil, I really only talked to people that had the same employer because of the types of roles that I had in teams I was on. Not until I joined ECMA as a board member and Texas Chemical Council as a board member did I really start to understand the value of sharing across the industry. And so I've been part of both of those organizations for over 4 years now. And the relationships I've developed, how we support each other when we have tough times, how we're working together to make the industry safer with less emissions, how we treat and understand our communities, we're doing as a full industry. And that feels good.
Nice.
Now, one of the things we have to be thoughtful about is, do we just tell ourselves we're doing better, or are we really,
Right.
performing better in a measurable way? And does that resonate with the community? And so as we move forward, I think we will see a better connectivity between the industry and community so that image is, realistic,
Right.
and really what the community thinks about us, and also progressive, because it's going to take everybody working together to move through the energy transition to decarbonize the industry that we're in.
For sure.
Gotcha.
Nice to see fierce competitors kind of wear the same shirt, fly the same flag.
Yes.
Right. You become peers. You become partners.
Absolutely.
On those occasions for those causes. On Tuesday, your competitors like, hey, I want to beat them.
Right.
But that's awesome. There's a few causes, right? Safety, the economy, our communities, that those things they just sink.
Yeah.
And that's great to hear.
And just spending time together, what I've realized is there is strength in leadership across the industry, and people want to do what's right. And so just seeing that and getting to know people more and realizing that versus just viewing other peers as a competitor, to your point, feels good,
Right.
because it just also gives me faith that the industry's got the right leadership to continue to progress and improve.
Yeah, we should repeat that, right? Not a lot of our listeners think that ExxonMobil was the devil, but like it's out there in the media, the big oil and gas, like people want to do what's right.
People
Like,
do.
Our industry, the giant oil and gas companies that are in our region, they really want to innovate
Yes.
to do what's right.
Regular
Absolutely.
People, right?
Not only do
Absolutely.
they want to, they're
No.
leading,
And they're doing it, taking action.
They're
That's
leading
100%
the
right.
pack.
I just want that story out there. I
Yeah.
mean, again, I know our listeners aren't the people that are fighting that. They're not the ones hanging from the Harbin Bridge in protest, but
But we are going to need to be more
Sure.
articulate about that as a
100%.
full industry, as a region, and really asking questions to understand where we've come from and where we're going, and everybody being on the same page is what it's going to take.
Well, and the fight's going to have to go down into the next generation, right?
Absolutely.
I mentioned earlier about wanting to bring my daughter
Yeah.
to come spend some time with some of your engineers, because I think they need to understand that there's a better story to be told, and that they can have She even said, "I want to do that. I want to do something that makes an impact." Well, you could work in oil and gas and make an impact on the environment the same
Absolutely.
way. Right?
Absolutely.
Do something powerful. So now, Zeke was boasting because he was at the women's luncheon. I didn't. I realized after seeing
You were
his picture, I was
golfing
like,
or
"Yeah, I don't know what it was."
fishing
So
or
now
something,
on a go,
leisure.
I'm never missing one again. Especially now that I got the great feedback of how good your speech was.
Thank
But you
you.
said you got some great feedback, some themes, some things that you picked up from the experience that you're perhaps leveraging now. Tell us about those.
Yeah, I was hopeful that the theme of being unapologetic and really talking about how I view myself and all my different roles in life would resonate. I was tremendously surprised at how touching it was for people. When I finished, I looked, and there was literally a line of people that wanted to talk to me and thank me, and I was just overwhelmed because I just didn't expect that. And what people would say to me is, "This changed the way I'm going to view myself."
Nice.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I just thought I could be, a role model that may help people think a little." But the fact that people resonated so much, realized that we all have challenges, and also I could see just made a personal commitment to own who they are, was overwhelming.
Nice.
And so what that told me was these types of stories that bring in more than just our leadership role need to be told. People are hungry to see leaders, regardless of gender, owning who they are and not just putting on a shiny appearance.
Right, authentic. And we talked about moms,
Right.
right? The topics that I thought that Kate brought up are things that our moms, your mom, didn't talk about, weren't really allowed to talk about.
Right.
And that's what I
Mhm.
think it just, hey, we're now talking about these things,
Right.
And it's Mental Health May, and we talk about things we didn't used to do in our industry, right? And that was
Yep.
one thing. And I brought my boss, Samantha, female leader in our company, and she came and was like, wow. And there was a lot of topics that, although simple, and to your point, like, hey, I think it was going to blow everybody's hair back, but they were things that we have not, as an industry specifically, talked about.
Right.
And I think everybody's like, oh, this is great. We have a leader, the largest oil and gas company in the world, talking about this now.
Yep.
So let's do it. Let's talk about it. And I think that's huge.
Yeah,
That's what
it
resonated with me.
opens the conversation.
100%. That's the
Right.
first step.
What were you
Right.
saying? Shave your leg. You shave your
I
legs every
shave
day.
my legs
Every
every
day.
day. It
Right.
helps me feel like a female, and that I took 3 minutes for myself.
Yeah, there you go.
And she puts on
Absolutely.
FRs, right?
I
Right.
do this.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
I just
every day.
put this on. That's right.
That's the gear.
That's
right?
the gear.
That's
That's
love
the
it, though.
gear.
Doesn't matter.
I love the transparency there, and I think again back to as a dad, as a girl dad, right? I
Mhm.
mean, there's so much education that needs to go out into the world to empower them to think, okay, I really can go any of these ways, and I can still be a woman,
Yep.
a proud woman inside of these environments,
That's right.
and carry myself that way, and then still go in and if she chooses, put on FREs, and that's how she wants it because she's inspired by that type of work. She can,
That's right.
and then still be extremely feminine on the other
She
side.
could be
That's right.
unapologetically feminine.
Yeah,
That's right.
love it.
That's right.
Love it.
The
Speaking of-
other thing I talked about
Yeah.
that I do think resonated is kind of choosing a list of priorities. And I went through my priorities, being my relationship with God, my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my children, and then how I apply the role as a leader. And so I think it also resonated that I've made that choice and that I live that way every day. It's challenging because different parts of different roles, creep in every day and start to consume time and energy. But really that grounding of taking myself back and choosing that priority each and every day and throughout the day, I think also resonated. So,
Well, that's a great transition to one of the questions that we wanted to bring up is how do you do it, right? Like, I mean, it's I just, again, we had my mom on here and I would wonder how she would do it. And then I'm thinking, okay, she just had me, which again, I was probably enough for 5 or 6 kids, bless her heart. But, so you've got 3,
I do.
2 in high school,
Yep.
and you're pushing every single day running a plant. I mean,
Right.
right. It's not just, it's not like 5 or 10 people.
It's not hosting
Right.
a
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. Jeez. So, and then on top of that, still having to pour back in, and you mentioned God, right? Because
Yep.
if that's at the center, that even having a relationship and sustaining that is work. It
That's
means you
right.
got to you have to be intentional about those. Tell us about how you build intentionality into all of those roles.
Okay. I would say my relationship with God, I have to really make myself stop and count my blessings, ask for the wisdom I need to fulfill these roles in a way that meets people's needs, but also doesn't deplete my own.
Mm.
And so it's a constant conversation
Yeah.
with God and a lot of grounding I have to have the discipline to do for myself. With my husband, I would say he's very patient. He doesn't need a lot from me, and that's helpful. At the same time, I can tell and I try to really read him to understand when we need to connect more.
Right.
And so that is a challenge, especially with the fact that we have a 6-year-old. Anybody with kids that age knows how consuming they can be, but it's really just because they want love and attention.
Right.
And so we're in that balancing phase right now of how do we stay connected, but to the point that we're still paying attention to
Wonderful.
his needs. For my 2 older kids, they are quite independent. Some of that's because they've learned to be that way with the types of roles that I've had. That also makes me proud because I feel
Right.
like they're going to be ready to face the world as really sound adults.
Right.
At the same time, I can tell sometimes when they need to talk to me, and they are very good about saying, Mom, I need you.
Right.
And not just me trying to always figure it out. I am very focused on being present at their events, sporting events specifically. My daughter played varsity soccer. She just finished
Wow.
her last season as a senior. My son plays varsity football. He's currently in varsity playoff baseball. He plays summer baseball. So I don't make everything, but I'm very intentional about when I do show up, and they know if I don't show up, why I'm not going to make it.
Gotcha.
And so back to that intentionality of choosing to be present. With my 6-year-old, of course, it's just, yes, they want you home. They want the hug. They want to be
Right.
played with. They want the bath. They want the chicken nuggets and macaroni,
Right.
whatever the need is. And I really focus on spending my weekends, very focused on,
Awesome.
being with my kids and meeting those needs. At the end of the day, I still have to take care of myself.
Right.
And what I'm learning as I age, I'm in my late 40s now, is I've got to find out where I fit in. And I've got to continue to make myself more of a priority so that I'm proud of who I am.
Right.
I must sleep.
Right.
I must fuel myself with, healthy nutrition foods.
Right.
I must shave my legs because that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
I color my hair.
Right.
I get facials. I work out, lift weights 3 or 4 times a week. I
Nice.
try to walk a certain number of steps every day. That all takes a ton of intentionality. I have my calendar planned out for the next few weeks, and I can tell you what days I'm going to work out and when.
Right.
It isn't an afterthought. It's part of my plan because I realize I don't fill those other roles well if I'm not intentional with taking care of myself.
Love it.
Yep. You gotta put your oxygen mask on first.
That's right.
Before you-
Absolutely.
yeah.
And the older I get, the more I'm realizing that. And I wish I had learned that lesson and applied it sooner.
Yeah, I think that's another. Speaking of topics that are now being talked about more than before, that has certainly become more prevalent
Yeah.
recently. Like,
And
hey,
accepted.
Correct.
Right.
Take care of yourself, and then you can take care of those that need you and you want to take care of. And I want to give you some credit because on the speech at the luncheon, you talked about hiking. I don't know. It sounded like 2 miles to see your son's baseball game that was out.
Oh, yeah.
Little
So
Cypress,
hiking down
Mauriceville, or somewhere you
dirt
were out to.
road.
Yeah, right. So being in this region, so again, I'm a Baytown native. We played Beaumont schools and
Right.
Orange schools and Little Cypress, Mauriceville. They
Yep.
beat us in soccer and
Yep.
Anyway, so
Yep.
so it's just the speech was very literal. Like, hey, I got off work, and one thing I thought was interesting. You said it doesn't matter what time you show up; it's that you do show up.
Yes.
You said, hey, sometimes
Yeah.
I'm late. I get off work and I get there, but I'm there, and I thought
Right.
that was really important.
Yeah,
to highlight.
one of the most freeing decisions I ever made was I don't have to be on time for every game because I was making myself crazy trying to,
Sure.
get away from the plant,
Right.
safely drive to Little Cypress, Mauriceville, which I've done multiple times, and show up, before the game starts. And when I finally told myself, they don't care. They don't even know if I'm there before the game starts.
Right.
Like if I show up 10 minutes late, it's not worth, the cardiac stress I
Right.
put myself under
The
trying to
ticket,
make
the
it there.
whatever, right.
Whatever, exactly. And so what's important to them is they know I love them, they know I support them, and that I'm going to be present anytime that I can, and they understand that I'm doing my best.
Right.
And the more they've matured, the more I've gotten that feedback, which has helped me kind of close that loop for myself.
That's awesome.
All they
Yeah.
remember is mom was there.
Mom was there.
Right.
They don't know that I'm 10 minutes
That's right.
late.
That's right.
We got 2 things that we want to make sure we capture. One would be getting you to get a little bit of acknowledgement of those individuals that have impacted you and what's kind of led to your success. Because I think we'd be remiss to miss that. But also, we jumped ahead, or not jumped ahead, but we pivoted for a minute. But I think we need to probably come back to at least talk a little bit about the decarbonization
Sure.
and really what you're seeing.
Sure.
Because again, we're watching. I mean, we're 20 years in the industry.
That's right.
I mean, we have to. You watched this from start to finish, and now you're seeing it come full circle to where we're at today. Talk to us about Exxon's role or what you're seeing in that.
Sure. I am very proud of where we are and where we're going as a company and as an industry. And I believe ExxonMobil will lead the industry in decarbonization. We have a lot of extremely talented resources working on how do we apply technology available today now to start down the path of decarbonization, and how do we participate across the industry? How do we bring industry partners together to develop the technology for the future? Going to a net zero place there's not a clear path. The technology is not present. It's not like as an industry, we're just choosing not to go there because we don't want to.
Right.
We human beings and society today have to develop that. And I'm very proud of the amount of resources we're investing to figure out that path.
Nice.
Where we're going to go ahead and make some steps is like in the hydrogen space, hydrogen fuel switching. We've made announcements that we intend to build a blue hydrogen plant in Baytown. I am extremely proud of that because it will be very closely linked to the plant that I'm accountable for today, the Baytown
Nice.
Olefins plant. And across Baytown, we'll be able to lower our emissions by 30%.
Wow.
And so we are taking those steps. We're making those capital investments. I spend a large amount of my time helping make sure we can make that investment successfully in
Fantastic.
Baytown. And so I am really, really proud that we're working on that together as an example.
The point to take away is, no offense to our government officials, but like the industry is leading it. The companies are doing it.
Correct.
It's not being mandated by the government. The government's not going to make it happen. The companies are going to make it happen.
That's right. That's
They
right.
want to and they care to.
We do. And our employees, the greatest purpose they find is knowing that they are part of that solution. And you talked about your daughter, she wants to be part of a solution. Our industry is the solution.
I love it. Our industry,
I mean,
that's got to be a slogan. Our industry is the solution.
We're
gonna
have
tens of thousands,
10,000 employees who don't care about the environment.
Absolutely not. We're all humans that care about the world we live in.
Yeah, I love it.
Now we're nearing our time, so we got to get off the show with the last thing of you sharing a little bit about what you believe has led to your success and who's had kind of an influence in that. So what characteristics would you say have carried you, and then who's kind of planted that seed or played a role in part of that?
So I've had a couple of supervisors I've worked with a long period of my career who, both Woody Paul and Bob Catadall, who helped me at the same time develop very high standards for operating plants, as well as they understood me as a person and they made sure I was taking the time to manage my relationships outside of ExxonMobil.
Nice.
With my spouse, with my children, with myself. And they taught me that I can make those choices for myself that may have been different choices than they needed to make for their personal situations, and that they would support me. They saw my capability as a leader and they pushed me just hard enough that I kept going versus saying, forget it, I can't do this and be the kind of mom I want to be.
Right.
They believed I could figure out how to do both, and they gave me the freedom and the space to do that. And so my whole role that I feel like I have as a female leader is to continue to pay that forward, both through the example I set with my team and the females that are around me, as well as more broadly through something like the Women's Leadership Luncheon or this podcast. Is I need to continue to pay that forward to say you can do it all.
Nice.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how that came to be. I mean, it seemed like you've done talks and speeches like that before, so I just wondered where that came from. So I understand that, but it's great. I think that message needs to be spread further than even just this organization. So
Absolutely.
I would encourage you to keep doing that.
Sure.
As you saw the line, like I said,
it was very motivating.
Yeah. Sure. Well, we're going to continue to share the story, and that's what this podcast is about. And so we want to thank you for joining us today because you hit the nail on the head. You covered a lot of great topics, and I think this is one that my daughter's going to hear. Right, I'm going to put it in her hand, and I would hope that those that are listening would do the same. So, Kate, we thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
For our audience, as always, right, the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region its mission is to share stories just like Kate's. But Kate is just an example of an entire region of diversity, of opportunity for growth, and organizations, oil and gas industry, petrochem. Everybody was working in this region to not only make the economic environment better, but to make the environment itself better, and communities better.
Raise families here.
Raise families here. We want people in this area, but then it's like a microcosm of the entire state as Texas continues to create one of the great footprints of places to do business. But that's also making an impact in the states and in the world globally.
Absolutely.
So we would encourage you to continue to tell that story. So if you're listening to this for the first time, please grab this episode, share it with somebody who needs to hear it, and pay it forward. If you don't subscribe to our channels, you can go to the Economic Alliance HoustonPortRegion.com, the website, and go to the media page. Scroll down and you can click and subscribe to any of our channels and stay tuned to us. You can reach out to Zeke and myself on LinkedIn, the best place to get us. If you have any recommendations for guests or people that you want to have join us or just want to give us feedback. So again, Kate, thank you for joining us today.
Happy Mother's Day, Kate.
Glad to have you. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
And guys, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in, and we appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to go to the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region website and subscribe to our channels. And let's pay it forward by sharing the good news of what's happening in our region by passing this episode to somebody you know.